Hey guys, what's up and welcome to a new Tesla update video. So today, as usual, let's go over the market, let's go over Tesla, let's figure out what has happened and what we can deter from it overall. But with all that being said and done, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit that like button. Of course, this is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. Make your own decisions, do your own research. And I also have my membership section now live for only $2.99 a month. Of course, you get access to all of these posts that I make throughout the day. Today was a bunch of posts that I talk about essentially, about Tesla, how it's moving, any important information, thoughts, essentially real time as the market is open and as Tesla stock is moving. And yeah, I'm pretty much posted as it is, answer questions, all that stuff. And yeah, people have been enjoying it so far. For the most part, from what I see at least, right? So, which is always nice to see. But regardless, let's just dive into it and let's figure out what has happened. By the way, don't forget, Monday is, of course, an off day for the US markets. So just as an FYI. Now, I did also enter a small bullish position. I'll explain that at the end of the video if you're curious. I'm not going to go into detail about it, but I will give you a kind of rough idea as to what I did do. Now, moving into a Tesla. Closing in about 3 minutes, looking like it will be up a beautiful almost 5% on the day, putting us at just over $193. Now, interestingly enough, Ford pretty much moving almost exact same as Tesla. And as I'm sure, people that are actually a little bit more, they were actually pretty much in sync, but Tesla started falling while Ford apparently has not started falling as much. Anyway, as I'm sure some of you are, do follow Tesla and whatnot, they have announced recently, just yesterday rather, on Twitter Spaces, Elon and Jim Farley, the Ford CEO, did announce how Tesla is essentially opening up their superchargers in 2024, early 2024, to Ford vehicles, and they're going to be equipped with their own adapters and whatnot. So that's a beautiful sight to see. That's really, really cool to see. Kudos to Jim Farley for having the balls really to just do that, which is great to see. So I think it's an overall win-win for everyone involved, and I'm curious to see how it goes. But regardless, off of that news, Tesla and Ford, of course, getting a beautiful rally. Now, of course, with that being said and done, the market, or especially tech in this case, pretty incredible rally on QQQ as well. So it's not just Tesla obviously rallying this on its own self. In fact, I would argue that Tesla is actually just following the market in this case, up 4.85%, while the market's up, or tech in this case, up 2.6%. It's kind of just following tech for the most part, maybe slight overperformance, but ever so slightly, you know what I mean? So, you don't want to attribute it all to that, but the market is of course quite green. Now, there's a lot to talk about, ladies and gentlemen. There's a pretty... Yeah, we're in a bit of a peculiar situation here, in my opinion. So let's talk about it. There's a lot to talk about. So there is going to be a bull case and a bear case. We'll talk about both situations, what both sides want to see happen for their respective side. Hope that's not too loud. There's construction happening. But what those respective sides want to see for themselves in order to continue to that direction, essentially. So, starting with the bullish side here, right? Let's talk about that. So Tesla came up to 200, obviously getting a rejection, the 200 moving average, whatever, right? We'll talk more about that in the bearish side. However, what Tesla wants to see here, right, is as follows. So first and foremost, you can see it had a beautiful rally, that we had not too long ago, right? A bit of a bull flag. I really am surprised it didn't go lower. I honestly think maybe the news of Ford yesterday, which is also good for Tesla overall, might be the reason why it's propelling like this. Plus, the market's just severely green today, so that could be the reason. But I'm genuinely surprised that we didn't get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 kind of move on Tesla, get a true bull flag. This was like a premature bull flag. So I'm a little bit surprised I didn't go a little bit lower first, maybe again to 175 or so. But sometimes it is like that. I did, like I said, scale into position pretty much at 179 or 180 back over here. And then, of course, it was a cash secured put. And then, of course, it essentially expired worthless in about 1 minute. So that's great. So I just essentially keep all of that premium, which is always nice to see. But with that being said, as we rallied up, right? So what the bulls want to see is as follows. They pretty much, it's quite simple, really. The bulls, there's only one objective, and that's as follows. You want to break above not only 200, but going back to the daily, you really want to break above the 200-day moving average, right? Exceptionally important. Now, the bulls have been doing a phenomenal job so far, right? We're above the 100-day moving average, and we're above the 50-day moving average, and we're above the 21 EMA, above all three of those bad boys. But this is the way I view it, right? This is, again, just my opinion, and a lot of people view it like this too, but the final boss to me, these are all bosses. Think of them like that. They're like bosses. They're they're stages, right? You break the 21 EMA, phenomenal. 50-day moving average, 100-day moving average. Those are all the levels, this higher level bosses, right? Now we're arguably at the final boss, or one of the main bosses, you know what I mean? And that's, of course, without a doubt, the 200-day moving average, right? Because the 200-day moving average has a lot more weight into which, right? As opposed to the 50 or 100, right? It's literally, I mean, essentially double the 100-day moving average, right? And 4 times the 50, because, you know, it weighs a lot more of the stock's movements overall, right? So going past something like the 200-day moving average means a lot more than going, let's say, past the 50 or even the 100, right? It's a very big deal. So the fact that it coincides at 200, which is just a psychological level of support, which I discussed all that right here, right? Psychological level support, the 200-day moving average, and it's just an overall, really just a resistance and a support from back here, you know, all the way back here. You know, this is a little bit higher, but you know, if we move all the way back here several times as well, right? It's just it historically has been a very strong support and resistance level. Obviously, in this case, since we're going from down to up, it is, of course, a resistance. But with that being said, that is extremely important to understand the fact that that is a crucial, like this whole area here is absolutely astronomical, right? Major level to break for the bulls if they want to really continue this upwards and really change this trajectory. Because at the moment, the bears, you know, if there's a time to step in, this is the time for the bears to step in. And so far, they're stepping in as of right now. So it'll be interesting to see, especially with the debt ceiling potentially next week even, or maybe even over the weekend. I mean, who knows exactly when that thing is going to play out. But especially with that like cloud looming over us, man, this is we're truly setting up for like quite a phenomenal June coming up here, guys. I mean, oof, man, this is gonna be pretty wild stuff for better or for worse, really. But regardless, that's what the bulls want to see. They want to see a break above 200 and the moving average, right? And if we can get that up, if we can start breaking and closing candles above the 200-day moving average, man, that's a damn good sign. That's a very good start, right? That's a very good start, and that, you know, will start looking pretty promising. Of course, we'll get to it as it comes. If it starts closing, we'll discuss it. But as of right now, it's not, and it is getting rejected. Moving over to the bearish side, right? So the bears, in my opinion, have a bit of a better upper hand here for now. First and foremost, we have a high here, which was good, by the way. This high was overall a higher high than this, which is a good start. However, with that being said, as we went here, then we set a lower high, then we set a lower low, and now we're potentially setting another lower high compared to these levels, right? So, you know, that's something to consider, right? If Tesla, you know, starts setting these lower highs like this over and over and lower lows, that's, you know, not good. So until that can break, so for instance, if we come back down, you know, maybe like, let's say over here, let's say we come down to like 160 and we set a higher low here, that's pretty damn good. You know what I mean? That breaks this little negative pattern that's happening, this bearish pattern of lower lows, lower highs. Number one. So the bulls want to defend that, but the bears want to continue that lower. But a little more, you know, I guess intermediate, if you will. The bears obviously want to defend this 200-day moving average and whatnot, and just the overall 200 level. That's extremely important. The bears also have a bearish divergence setting up for them, where we've talked about this several times before. I'm going to delete this now because it's fairly irrelevant. But you know, as the RSI is doing this, our stock is doing quite literally the opposite, right? You know what I mean? So that's obviously a bearish divergence in my view, right? So that's kind of a bad sign for the bulls and a good sign for the bears. Again, it doesn't mean it has to play out. It's, you know, take it as you will. I personally like to put a lot of, you know, I look at it pretty, you know, I don't know what the word is exactly, but I take it pretty seriously, I guess is what I'm trying to say. You know what I mean? And, you know, other than the daily is not too bad, right? I mean, because of this, you know, drawdown right here, you can see that it is still technically peaking its head above this area. So it's still technically making a higher high, which is good. The 4 hour, let's take a look at the 4 hour. Earlier I was looking at it and it was looking good, but now that it's fallen, it's pretty much barely made it above it, you know what I mean? So it's pretty much a double top, you can argue there. So that's not great. However, as we go to the 3 hour and lower, you're going to notice that this really starts becoming a lot more of a bearish divergence. You know what I mean? See, as the stock went higher, the RSI couldn't go higher. The 2 hour, the 1 hour, even the 30-minute, you know what I mean? So that's something to consider. That's really important to understand, that bearish divergence is pretty important to look at. And the bears really want to continue that, because that's a pretty big thing to continue. Now, those are the main things I'll be looking at, or the bears should be looking at. And I mean, I guess in this case, I'll be looking at as well. I did, like I said, enter a small bullish position, which we'll talk about very shortly. But before we do that, I also want to take a look at the VIX. We talked about how the VIX, if it's having issues closing above 20, that's a pretty bearish or a pretty bullish sign for the market, bearish for the VIX, right? And in this case, it's really having a lot of problems. And it did actually come back to retest this overall level right here, and it's like it's kind of closing right at it. It's hard to say if it's actually above it or not. It's like pretty much, it's like right at the line. It's like right on it, man. It's like it's just barely like. It's like right on the man. It's a tough one. It's a tough one to say for sure. But you know, we did talk about how if it cannot close candles above 20 and maintain 20, that's pretty bad. But it's good for the market, and the market will have, you know, a nice chance to rally. And that's exactly what has happened so far. So until VIX again starts closing candles above 20, the market will have room to rally. Just keep that in mind. It's very important to understand. And the final thing we'll take a look at quickly is, of course, before the weekly on Tesla, is I want to look at TSLQ, right? So this bull flag completely just eradicated, just non-existent essentially, right? However, once again, you know, it is arguably setting up a bullish divergence, right? Obviously the opposite. So the 4 hours is actually looking pretty not great, but the 3 hour, the 2 hour, the 1 hour, right? Same concept. It's essentially just flipped of Tesla. As it's making lower lows, the RSI is making higher lows. Keep that in mind, guys. Keep that in mind. That's very important to understand. So just, take it for what it's worth. That's how I'm looking at it. And I personally put a lot of weight into that. Now, the final thing we'll take a quick look at, we'll remove all the drawings, is of course the weekly candle. And you can see the weekly candle is not that bad. I mean, again, similar to what we looked at the daily, it is still making, lower lows and lower highs, right? We had a higher high here, we had a higher low here, but then we have a lower high and then a lower low, potentially a lower high here. And then I want to see where this lower low takes, or lower section takes us. Do we go for another lower low, or do we set a higher low now? That's going to be important to understand for me. However, clearly on the weekly, we are actually closing above the 200-day moving average. So I wouldn't be surprised if we come down maybe, to 180 or something like that. And if we can, bounce off the 200-day moving average on the weekly, that's not too shabby, man. That's actually pretty damn good. So that's going to be important to see. So it's interesting. We have the 200-day moving average on the weekly right below us as a potential support, while the 200-day moving average on the daily right above us as a resistance. So very peculiar situation that we find ourselves in for Tesla here. But ultimately, I expect it to essentially continue zigzagging around in here until it breaks out either like this, or it breaks out either like this. It'll be one of these two. The question is really just which direction will it be, and that's what I'll be patiently waiting to see which way it goes, while also obviously selling options against shares that I potentially might have next week, which I will talk about shortly, or just cash secured puts, which I've been doing for pretty much this whole time. I've been selling cash secured puts. So as Tesla's been doing nothing, just zigzagging up and down, I've been making money on that as well, which is good for me, of course, as an options seller. Now, lastly, I did enter a very small position. It's like I sold 2 cash secured puts pretty much right before the market closed. Actually, pretty much exactly where it closed. I sold 2 cash secured puts for next week. Just 2. And again, that's a very small percentage of my personal portfolio. So, I'm taking it, risk adverse, if you will. But, if it does rally, I have some skin in the game. If it doesn't, fantastic. I'll sell some more. But that's kind of what I'm doing and what I am seeing right now. So let me know what you guys think down below. Thank you all so much for watching. Again, Monday is, of course, a day off in the US markets, which is also why I did a cash secured put here, even though I do think it's a little bit bearish here, mainly because Monday is an off day. So that means that, I have an extra time of theta decay for my options that I just sold, which is always nice to see. But yeah, all that being said, guys, thanks for watching. Let me know what you think down below. Again, the membership section is there if you want to join it over the weekend and prepare yourself for next week. But otherwise, thanks for watching. I'll see you Tuesday. Peace.